I am about to tell you how I went from thinking Solo Leveling was mid and mindless power fantasy slop to thinking it's probably one of the most fun and surprisingly emotion-evoking stories I've experienced in a very long time. If you're an anime only wondering if you should read Solo Leveling, then you're in luck because I will also be answering that question before I delve into any manhwa spoilers. So as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more Solo Leveling content, and let's jump straight into my brutally honest review of Solo Leveling. Okay, let's get straight to the point. I watched season 1 of Solo Leveling when it aired, and I thought it was the definition of mid. Cool, definitely cool, but mid. And not long ago, the second season started, and after falling asleep in the second episode, I got pretty damn bored. And so I dropped it, at least for a few weeks. When I finally got around to binging the rest of it, I realized it was actually pretty damn good. Still mindless power fantasy slop with no good writing to be found, but somehow it was still so goddamn fun to watch, I can't really explain it. The animation, the colors, the abilities, and the insane aura farming that could rival even Satoru Gojo is exactly what made this show so fun to watch. Now, I think we can all agree Igris was the highlight of season 1, as well as the moment where Jinwoo, aka Mr. Leveling, gained his shadow extraction ability, but the rest of it was like kind of I'm not gonna lie. The only thought-provoking thing that maybe happened was the mystery of what the hell the system is and why he was even given it. Oh, and let's not forget the mystery of how getting stronger meant he was able to grow a whole 2 feet. I mean, imagine being given a real-life skill tree, but instead of investing your points in something like strength, you put them in your height. Yup, could never be me. Anyway, Season 2 massively picked up the pace because it was then that the Chimera Ant arc and the battle against Ant King Meruem officially began. Actually, on second thoughts, that doesn't sound right, but whatever. It was this arc that made me come to the conclusion, wow, this anime might not actually be mid after all. And despite my extensive list of criticisms, which I'll get into in a moment, I've realized I was right. Now, what instantly got me hooked about the Jeju Island arc was seeing all of the S-rank hunters of Korea and Japan come together in preparation for the raid, because believe it or not, I was getting a little bit bored of Mr. Leveling being overwhelmingly stronger than everyone, and I wanted him to get put in his place by a veteran S-rank hunter. But no, after officially becoming Korea's newest S-rank, it is revealed in the training episode that Jinwoo has already surpassed literally every single S-rank hunter there, including Goto Ryuji, the strongest and most glazed hunter in Japan, who is said to be the closest to national level. I mean, sure, seeing the S-ranks fight was pretty damn cool, and sure, seeing Jinwoo aura farm on people with egos is always a fun watch. But how in the lazy writing has Jinwoo gapped every S-rank before even getting to see what they can actually do? There was absolutely no build-up, no foreplay, nothing. I know it's called Solo Leveling, but come on, I would like to see them in action long before Jinwoo could rival them, so that we could actually have something to compare him to as he got stronger. But no, the oh-so-legendary S-rank seemed like nothing more than useless peasants by the time they were properly introduced. And it was also that Mr. Leveling could aura farm just that little bit more. Not to mention the fact 90% of these S-ranks aren't even given actual abilities. Most of them are just shown as strong mana, strong punch, fast run. Choice Fire is awesome, and turning into a giant beast is pretty damn cool. So much potential is here for some awesome abilities, but it's just been flushed down the drain. I don't know, it just kind of feels lazy. And this is genuinely my biggest criticism of the entire series. I hate how outgunned literally everybody other than Jinwoo is, and this remains an issue all the way throughout the entire story, which kinda sucks. Anyway, I'm gonna stop ranting about this before I, literally lose my mind. The entire Jeju Island raid was pretty damn awesome, and dear god, I have never hated feet more in my life. Yes, the whole thing was literally Hunter x Hunter's Chimera Ant arc if it was written by a hyperactive toddler, but it was still pretty cool all the same. The Ant King Beru no-diffed everybody he encountered, including that fraud Goto, and was only outmatched by Mr. Leveling himself as well as the cameraman. Jinwoo vs Beru is definitely great because it's fast-paced, colourful, and full to bursting with aura, especially in the moment when he first arrived on the scene. That was so cool. What I don't like about this fight, though, is the same thing I don't like about a lot of Jinwoo's earlier fights. There is no emotional motivator. Jinwoo stood over Beru the same way that Yuji stood over Mahito, but the Solo Leveling version feels hollow in comparison because these two had literally never met before, whereas Yuji's felt meaningful and impactful because of his history with Mahito, who had literally traumatized him for the last few months. I also think the animation was good, but way overrated because at the end of the day it was mostly a blue and red squiggle natural on the screen, and lots of the other shots felt kind of stiff and lacked a bit of, magic compared to the manhwa. Still very good though. Overall, season 2 of the anime was just so much better than the first season, even though it maintained the same flaws of having practically no writing. It was simply a really fun watch, which is completely fine. Now, what I really didn't expect was to read the webtoon and realize how so many of these flaws were not at all what I thought they were. So before I move on to sharing my experience with the manhwa, I'm gonna give a very quick spoiler-free answer to the question of whether you should read Solo Leveling or not. If you feel invested in Jinwoo's story and want to uncover the mysteries of the system, then yes, you should absolutely read it. The story does actually have some very emotion-provoking writing, as well as a very strong theme of humanity and the value of the human experience, especially when you reach those later chapters. The lack of character development and emotion there is from the other hunters not only becomes less of an issue, but the real side characters actually end up being Mr. Leveling's shadows. They grow alongside him and actually gain personalities which you will definitely learn to love. I mean, Beru is just unintentionally hilarious. Also, I've gotta say, as much as animation is great, the art and level of aura in the manhwa is just different to the anime, and I think it's better. The anime is good for fights and actually visualizing this stuff, but when it comes to framing certain shots, the images in the manhwa are just so much better than anything I've seen in the anime so far. I can't really explain it without showing you, so I'll just kind of show you a few things that don't really spoil anything. But I really do recommend that you read it. The lore behind the system, the gates, and the hunters is also so much cooler and better than I ever expected it to be. If there is one thing that Solo Leveling does well, it's making sure that literally every single plot point is perfectly tied up by the end of the story. And what an amazing and emotional ending it is. Like, I didn't expect it to be that great. Even the epilogue is amazing because you realize just how much you fell in love with all of Jinwoo's shadows and even some of the human side characters too. I finished the story genuinely thinking I would miss them and want to see more. It made me actually physically sad. Also, anybody who ever tells you that Jinwoo has no writing or that Solo Leveling as a whole has no writing is either completely illiterate or has literally never read it. Reading it all the way through to the end made everything that came before it so much better and makes so much more sense. And albeit I don't tend to like retrospective writing, but it still makes it better than not having any writing at all. The themes of humanity and the value of life, as well as the value of strength and loyalty, are done so well despite the story remaining pretty simple. There are definitely some back and forth moments where I think the writing gets a bit lazy or repetitive, but overall it is just so much better than I ever thought it would be. So to answer the question, yes, you should definitely read Solo Leveling. It's a very different experience to the anime, and I think it is better overall. Also, sorry, that was nowhere near as brief as I expected it to be. Anyway, I'm now going into full spoiler territory, so please exit the video if you're an anime only. You've been warned. Alright then, I'm gonna keep it very real with you. The manhwa was just so much more than I expected, and the story, simple as it is, really did move me, especially some of the character endings in the epilogue. God damn, the iron ending had me in tears, oh. Now, as I said before, the art also made me enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would. The system being designed to allow for a human to grow capable of holding Ashbourne's powers is probably the best explanation I can think of, and I really like it. And that's because it plays into that overarching theme of humanity. Ashbourne deciding to give his powers to a human was seen as foolish from the monarch's perspective, but it's the fact that Jinwoo was human that resulted in their victory, because human qualities were something that both the rulers and the monarchs lacked, as well as something that they all looked down on and underestimated. The best example of how Ashbourne's successor being a human changed things was how it affected Jinwoo's shadows. Over time, the shadows became more and more like their king, in this case being Jinwoo, so they slowly became more and more human. Seeing Igris reflect on his life of service, seeing Tusk order a custom jacket styled after Jinwoo's, and seeing Beru form such a strong emotional attachment with the Little King, aka Jinwoo's son, are all beautiful examples of how Solo Leveling amazingly explores this theme of humanity and the value of being human. Yes, the story is simple, and yes, most of the payoff comes all at once during the explanation of the Great War and the epilogue. But since the very beginning of the story, the author set those themes up by dropping breadcrumbs and weaving in small details that we can then look back on later on in a very different light. For example, the importance of Jinwoo being an E-rank hunter who risked his life so many times, also that he could provide for his family. It's a very, human motive. Ashbourne then observed that he continuously avoided death and yet kept going on, which is what made him the perfect candidate to be the new Shadow Monarch and handle the system. Now, as much as I still hate the fact that the other hunters get sidelined so fast, the later parts of the manga do kind of manage to improve on this. At least a little bit, sometimes. Christopher Reed's off-screen death will forever piss me off though. I'll never forgive them for that one. Oh my god, he looks so cool. I'm also not a fan of how Lu, the second strongest hunter ever, literally does nothing. And I also don't like how Thomas Andre is built up to be this insane force of destruction, and Jinwoo very predictably no-diffs him like everybody else ever. Okay, right, maybe this problem doesn't actually improve all that much, whatever. But at least the vessels of the rulers can actually throw hands and somewhat clash with beings like the monarchs. Back in his prime, Gungi would have definitely been able to take down the Ant King in Jinwoo's place, as would pretty much all of the national level hunters. By making them vessels of these higher beings, it gives the series a very good reason to actually make them way stronger than your run-of-the-mill S-rank. The big final battle also included beasts of all levels, so all of the S-rank hunters could actually take part in it, and we can see them do their part in the final battle. Thomas Andre even had some pretty impressive moments where he clashed with a monarch. But what really did it for me was the monarchs versus rulers flashback and the origin of the Shadow Monarch. And this is mainly because I love Lord of the Rings. I'm like a proper lore-researching nerd when it comes to that fantasy universe. And my biggest complaint about Lord of the Rings is that the premise of the First Age, with Morgoth and the Valar and Maiar and great fiery beasts and great wars, is hardly ever expanded on at all, and there's almost no hope of it ever being adapted. It also doesn't really follow the like manhwa manga kind of power system thing. There isn't like laser beams and strong punch. It's very philosophical as opposed to actually fighting with magic. So mixing in the two things of kind of the fantasy aspect of that world with a power system like in Solo Leveling gave me this really weird childlike happiness when I saw it all. And Solo Leveling actually ended up being exactly what I always imagined the First Age of the Lord of the Rings universe to look like. And it really just scratched that fantasy nerd itch for me, I don't know. It may just be power fantasy slop at first, but once you reach the part where all gets explained and we see the rulers versus the monarchs, I think it loses the slop part. It just is straight up awesome after that point. I mean, Ashbourne, being a fragment of brilliant light who had the darkness of the Shadow Monarch hidden in him, makes him this perfect balance of both sides. And he literally does waver between light and dark constantly throughout history, which makes the fact that he chooses a human to be his successor all the more meaningful. It's like he's the balance between the two sides, and humans are kind of meant to represent that balance, which is why Jinwoo made for such a good candidate. Yeah, it's basically a chosen one bringing balance to the Force situation. And if you think I'm looking too far into things, it really doesn't matter, because this can still be enjoyed from a very simple and basic power fantasy slot perspective if that's what you want to do. But I, for one, really like the themes of humanity and loyalty and strength in Solo Leveling. I think they're done really well. Yeah, overall, it's just really cool. I still think everything is a bit dull and substanceless until the end of Season 2, but looking back after finishing the series makes a lot of those dull moments a lot more meaningful, which is definitely better than nothing. I really thought I was gonna read it and have to hate on it, but I was pleasantly surprised. So yeah, make sure to read it if you haven't. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe, especially if you want to see more Solo Leveling videos. Feel free to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter, links below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in a bit.